He spent years shaping a version of me that never existed. So when I walked into that room, I knew that everyone already believed his lie, but they had no idea what was yet to come. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped through the doorway. The air shifted. Conversations froze. People stared at me for a second too long, then looked away. I felt every pair of eyes in the room settle on me, as if I had walked in carrying a secret I did not know about. My stepbrother, Edwin, stood in the centre of the living room. He faced our relatives with the calm confidence of a man who had already shaped the story before the truth could speak for itself. His voice carried through the room in a steady rhythm. I heard the words as I drew closer. He took the money. I wish I did not have to say this, but he betrayed the family. The room shifted again. A quiet gasp came from my aunt. My father reached for his chin and pressed his fingers against it, a habit he kept for moments of disappointment. My mother stared at the floor. She never looked at me directly when she felt powerless. I tried to understand what Edwin was talking about, but he kept going. He used my login at work. He tried to cover his tracks, but I found everything. I cannot believe he would go this far. I thought he had changed. The shock inside me felt sharp and fast. I had no idea what this was about. I'd never used his login. I'd never touched his accounts. I worked hard to stay away from anything that could be twisted against me. Yet here he stood, speaking as if he held the truth in his hands and I held the sins he wanted to expose. My father finally turned to me. His eyes were heavy. He did not ask if the story was true. He simply looked at me as if he already knew the answer. A tired sigh escaped him. "Rowan," he said, "why must you always bring trouble?" The words landed with a sting I knew too well. There was no room for explanation. There was only the expectation that I would justify myself again. Edwin's lies always reached my father faster than I could reach the truth. I learned that the hard way growing up. I took a slow breath. My hands trembled slightly. I searched the room for one face willing to pause and ask me what really happened. No one spoke. Even the children who usually ran around with careless joy watched me in silence. Edwin finally turned toward me. He wore a gentle smile. It was the same smile he used years ago when he pretended to hand me something helpful, but ended up taking something important instead. The kind of smile that said he knew exactly what he was doing. He tilted his head a little. "Tell them what you did, Rowan." In that moment, everything inside me went still. I realized he had prepared this scene long before I arrived. Every whisper, every stare, every detail of his story. He wanted to break me in front of everyone, and he believed he already had. I met Edwin on a cold afternoon in late autumn. The house smelled of polished wood and fresh paint because my mother wanted everything perfect before her new husband arrived with his son. I stood beside her in the living room, holding my hands behind my back the way she taught me when I was younger. She told me to smile and be polite. I was 15 and eager to get it right. When the door opened, her name first. He carried a warm grin and a voice that filled every space he walked into. Behind him came Edwin. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, like someone used to having attention follow him. His posture was perfect. His hair was neat. His eyes moved quickly, taking in every detail before they landed on me. He stretched out his hand and said, "You must be Rowan." His voice was calm but guarded. The handshake was firm, almost too firm, as if he wanted me to know who had the stronger grip. My mother smiled brightly, relieved that we met without any conflict. She did not see the way his eyes flickered with a silent question. "Who are you, and why are you here?" I noticed small things that day. The way he kept his distance. The way he observed the house like he was checking for changes that bothered him. The way he kept glancing at me, trying to place me somewhere in the order of his life. My mother's new husband showed me the spare room, told me I had full access to the house, and said we were one family now. I nodded and thanked him. Edwin stood at the staircase, arms crossed, watching. That night at dinner, the table felt crowded even though only 4 of us sat there. Edwin spoke about his school awards, his sports achievements and his upcoming exams. His father beamed with pride. My mother looked at him with admiration. When the conversation moved to me, it died quickly. I shared that I enjoyed computers and wanted to study programming. No one reacted much. Edwin raised a brow and asked, "Do you think you can handle that?" His tone was light, almost playful, but the intention behind it pulled at me. He wanted me to feel small. I kept quiet because my mother was happy. That mattered more than anything in that moment. She looked peaceful for the first time in years, and I did not want to interrupt that peace with my discomfort. I convinced myself that Edwin just needed time to adjust. He did not need time. He needed control. The first sign came 2 weeks later. I left a school project on the kitchen counter while I ran upstairs to grab my charger. When I returned, the papers were gone. We searched everywhere. My mother insisted I must have misplaced them. Edwin sat at the dining table with a textbook in front of him. He did not look up. I saw the faintest smile when my mother walked away. I told myself I imagined it. A month later, I saw him showing his classmates a model that looked exactly like mine. His father stood beside him, praising his effort. I said nothing, but a quiet ache settled in my chest. Then came the day he spilled water on my laptop. He apologized, acted upset, and promised it was an accident. My mother believed him immediately. His father placed a hand on his shoulder and told him to be more careful next time. I stood there holding the ruined laptop and felt something inside me shrink. I convinced myself to let it go. I wanted to keep the peace. My mother's happiness, but peace built on silence never lasts. I see that now. And I saw it again the night he deleted my college application and pretended he knew nothing about it. I should have spoken then, but I stayed quiet. I did not know silence would become the weapon he used to shape my future. The morning after Edwin submitted the project he stole from me, I sat on the school steps and tried to understand how someone could smile in your face and take from you with the same hands. I remember holding my backpack against my knees and staring at the pavement, wondering if I had made everything up in my mind. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he had not meant to take it. Maybe the similarities were just coincidence. I tried to convince myself of many things that morning. None of them were true. When I got home, my mother hugged me and asked how school went. I said it was fine. She looked tired, and I did not want to add anything heavy to her day. She had just married again. She deserved peace. So I carried my silence like a small stone in my pocket. Then came the next strike. My laptop had been slow for days, so I placed it on the dining table and went to grab a screwdriver set I kept in my drawer. When I returned, Edwin stood over the laptop holding a glass of water. He looked startled when he saw me. The glass slipped from his hand. Water spilled across the keyboard. I froze for a second before rushing to save it, but it was too late. He apologized quickly. He said he was rushing to finish homework. He said he had no idea the laptop was there. My mother hurried over and told me accidents happen. His father put a hand on Edwin's shoulder and said it was an honest mistake. I stood there holding a dripping laptop with my mouth half open. I wanted to say something, but the words dissolved on my tongue. Edwin kept his eyes lowered, but I caught a small curve forming at the corner of his mouth before he hid it. That moment stayed with me for years. The worst came the following year when I applied to University Hall for their computer science program. I spent months preparing my portfolio. I checked the deadlines twice a day. I submitted everything a week early. At least that is what I thought. 2 months later, I received a notification. The university never got my documents. The application portal showed incomplete fields. I sat on my bed staring at the screen. I knew I had submitted everything. I remembered each step clearly. Something felt wrong. I showed my parents the email. My father's face hardened with disappointment. "Rowan, do you ever take responsibility for anything?" he asked. My mother stood behind him with a worried expression. She wanted to defend me, but she also wanted to keep the peace. She stayed quiet. Edwin walked in while I tried to explain that something must have gone wrong. He raised his hand slightly and said, "Maybe Rowan just missed a step. It happens. These things can be confusing." He sounded sincere, calm, helpful, and my father nodded as if the case was closed. Later that evening, I found the truth by accident. I had left my old phone charging on the shared study desk. Edwin had been using the computer beside it earlier. When I picked up my phone, I saw an unsent message on the screen. I opened it. It was from Edwin's email draft folder. He had logged into my application account the night before the deadline. He deleted files. He wrote a note to himself about teaching me a lesson. I sat there staring at the screen as my stomach tightened. My hands felt cold. I finally understood. Edwin was not reacting to my presence. He was planning around it. This was not insecurity. This was strategy. I never confronted him. I knew no one would believe me without proof. He had already shaped the version of me that everyone trusted. The careless boy, the one who made mistakes, the one who always needed help. I went to bed that night with a heavy chest and a quiet vow that I would build a life far away from his shadow. I kept that vow for years, but I did not know that fate would pull us into the same workplace, and Edwin would find a new stage to continue the war he started long ago. I kept my distance from Edwin after the university incident. I finished school through a slower route, took smaller jobs and built my skills step by step. It was not a straight road, but it was mine. I learned to code, manage projects and solve problems without anyone opening doors for me. Every little win felt earned. When I finally got an offer at Helix Systems, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt safe. The office was bright and open. People respected skill more than last names. My supervisor, Mrs. Kearns, cared about results, not family connections. It felt like a clean slate. For 2 years I focused on my work. I arrived early, stayed late when needed, and quietly climbed from junior developer to project lead. My team trusted me. My name started to matter inside that building. Then Edwin walked in. I remember the morning clearly. I was reviewing a sprint backlog when the office door opened and our director, Mr. Lang, walked in with a new hire at his side. The man wore a crisp suit and a confident smile. It took me a second to recognize him. Edwin. His eyes met mine for a brief moment, then shifted quickly to Mr. Lang as if I was just another employee in the room. He greeted the team, shook hands, and introduced himself as if our history did not exist. "I'm glad to join the Helix family," he said. "I heard you all do important work here." My stomach tightened. The safe space I had built for myself suddenly felt crowded again. They placed him on a parallel team at first, working on a different product. We barely crossed paths. I tried to convince myself it would stay that way. I focused on my tasks and avoided unnecessary contact. For a few weeks, it worked. Then he asked to collaborate. It started with small things. He sent me a message one afternoon, asking if I could share some of my code structure because he admired the way I organized my modules. The compliment felt strange, but I shared a general overview. He thanked me and used the information. Later he invited me to sit in on one of his team meetings. He introduced me to his group as a quiet genius, and said he could learn a lot from me. His tone sounded friendly, yet something in his eyes reminded me of that first handshake years ago, the grip that lasted a bit too long. A few weeks after that, I noticed something odd. During a project review, Mr. Lang praised Edwin for a feature that looked just like the one my team had been working on. The structure, the approach, even some of the comments. I kept my expression still, but inside a familiar frustration woke up. After the meeting, I checked the internal repository. I found traces of my work in his branch, not copied word for word, but close enough. He had used access privileges to view our shared libraries, and then repackaged pieces as his own. I took a screenshot. I saved it somewhere safe. That was the day I decided things would not repeat like before. From that moment, I documented everything. I kept a simple personal rule. If I did anything important, I kept a record. If we had meetings, I recorded the audio for reference with clear notes. If I sent an email, I backed it up. I told myself I was doing this to stay organized. Deep down, I knew I was also preparing for something I could not yet name. Edwin's behavior grew bolder. He started accidentally leaving my name off shared documents. In group calls, he would interrupt me and rephrase my ideas as his own. When deadlines shifted, they always seemed to shift in ways that made me look late and him look early. At first, my supervisor did not notice. Then one day, she called me into a private meeting. "Rowan," she said quietly, "I know your work level. I know what you can do, but I'm seeing conflicting reports about missed deadlines. Talk to me. Is something going on?" I looked at her and saw genuine concern. That gave me the courage to be honest without sounding defensive. I explained how deadlines had changed without notice. I showed her my original messages and timestamps. I did not accuse anyone directly, I simply presented facts. She listened carefully, then said, "Document everything from now on. I trust you, but I need proof if this escalates." Her words confirmed what I already felt. This was not in my head. This was a pattern. After that, I watched Edwin more closely. I noticed how he charmed managers with easy conversation, how he took on visible tasks even if others had done most of the work, how he spoke about teamwork while slowly isolating people who questioned him. He knew how to appear valuable without truly being accountable. One evening, as people packed up for the day, I passed by a conference room and saw him inside with Mr. Lang. The door was open just enough for their voices to slip out. I stopped when I heard my name. Edwin spoke in a concerned tone. "I do not want to cause trouble for Rowan," he said, "but I think he is overwhelmed. He misses timelines, and I have had to pick up after him several times. I am just worried he might hurt the team." My chest burned. I stepped away before they could see me. He was building a case against me step by step. I went home that night with a clear, sharp thought. This was not insecurity. This was not rivalry. This was the same old war, now playing out on a bigger stage. And I knew then that the next move he made would not stay inside the office walls. The day Edwin brought the fight home began like every other quiet weekend. I planned to visit my parents and have lunch with them. My mother called the night before and said the whole family would be there. I thought it would be a simple gathering. I walked in relaxed and unprepared for what waited for me. The first warning came from the silence. It was too heavy, too focused. I greeted the room, but the returned greeting sounded stiff, forced, no warmth, no curiosity. My aunt looked away when I caught her eye. My uncle gave a tight smile and shifted in his seat. Even the cousins who used to run toward me stayed close to their parents. Then I heard Edwin's voice. He stood near the fireplace speaking to a half-circle of relatives. His tone was low, steady, and loaded with fake concern. He spoke like someone who regretted bringing bad news, but felt duty-bound to share it. I stepped closer, and the words became clear. "He accessed my account at work," Edwin said. "He did it behind my back. I kept quiet because I wanted to protect the family, but now the company is involved. It is serious." A ripple passed through the room. Some widened their eyes, some whispered. My father sighed loudly and shook his head. My feet felt heavy as I moved toward them. I kept telling myself I must have misheard something. There had to be a misunderstanding. But the truth settled in fast. Edwin had created a story designed to crush me before I could speak. My father turned toward me slowly. His face was drawn. He looked tired and disappointed. "Rowan," he said, "why would you do something like this?" The question cut deeper than any accusation. There was no space for my voice, no space for doubt, no space for truth. They believed him before I opened my mouth. "I did not access anything," I said. "I have no idea what he is talking about." Edwin stepped forward as if to comfort me. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and lowered his voice so only I could hear him. "You should have stayed in your lane," he whispered. I pulled away from his touch, but he already turned back to the family and continued his performance. "I do not want him to get in trouble," he said. "I even told HR that he might have been confused, maybe stressed. I tried to cover for him, but the company insisted on an internal review." Lies rolled out of his mouth with ease. He sounded protective, loyal, the kind of brother people admired. Every sentence tightened the net around me. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes were glossy. She said my name gently, almost pleading. "Rowan, please tell us the truth." I wanted to break something. The table, the walls, the silence inside me that protected him for so many years. My hands shook. I took a deep breath. "There is no truth to what he is saying," I said. "I have never touched his account. He is lying." The word lying felt heavy in the room. A few relatives gasped. One of my cousins whispered something to her mother. My father stiffened. Edwin's face remained calm, but his eyes sharpened for a second. A tiny shift, a warning. He inhaled softly and said, "I understand why he is defensive. Anyone would react this way if they were caught. I am not angry. I just want him to get help." The room turned colder. I opened my mouth, ready to explain everything, ready to risk the peace I had protected for years. But at that moment, my phone buzzed. I felt the vibration through my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a new email. It was from HR. Subject line, "Immediate meeting required. Internal breach report filed." My chest tightened. I read the message again to be sure. HR had received a formal complaint. Edwin had taken this beyond the family. He had taken it to the company. He had crossed the line I hoped he would never cross. My father saw the message on my screen and let out another sigh. "You should go to the meeting," he said. "Face what you have done." I looked at Edwin. He gave me the same small smile he had worn years ago, the one he used each time I stumbled, the one that said he always knew how to stay ahead. I walked out of the house with a single thought pulsing behind my ribs. If Edwin wanted a war, he was about to see a side of me he never expected. I barely slept the night before the meeting. My mind replayed Edwin's words again and again, his calm voice, his confident lies, the look in his eyes when he told the family he was only trying to help me. I kept reminding myself that I had evidence, I had recordings, I had emails, I had the truth. But the truth does not always speak loud enough when you're facing someone who has already shaped the narrative. I arrived at the office early. The hallways felt colder than usual. Some colleagues greeted me, but their smiles carried uncertainty. News travels fast in offices. I knew they had heard something, maybe not the whole story, maybe only what Edwin wanted them to know. I reached the HR department and waited outside the conference room. The door opened slowly and Mrs. Hale, the HR manager, nodded at me. "Come in, Rowan." Inside, a long rectangular table stood in the centre. At one end sat Mrs. Hale with a stack of documents. At the other sat Mr. Lang, the director, and next to him, legs crossed and posture relaxed, sat Edwin. He smiled at me as if this was a casual meeting, as if we were about to discuss weekend plans. I sat across from him and placed my folder on the table. Mrs. Hale cleared her throat. "We are here to address a breach report filed by Edwin. He claimed his account was accessed without permission, and that you, Rowan, may have been involved. We want to give both parties the opportunity to present information." I nodded. My hands were steady even though my chest felt tight. Edwin spoke first. "I wish this was not happening," he said. "I've tried to guide Rowan since he joined the company. I've covered for him several times because I know he struggles with deadlines and stress, but this time the breach was serious. Client data was at risk." He turned to me with concerned eyes. "I do not want to see him lose his job, but I cannot ignore what happened." Every word was rehearsed, every pause calculated. He wanted to look like the responsible one, the mature one, the brother who cared. Mrs. Hale turned to me. "Rowan, do you want to respond?" I looked at Edwin for a second. His face was calm, but his fingers tapped lightly against the table, a small tic he had when he feared losing control. "Yes," I said. "I want to respond." I opened my folder and pulled out my notes. First, I never accessed his account. Second, I've been documenting every interaction for months because I suspected something was wrong. Edwin frowned but said nothing. I continued. "I have recordings of meetings where he changed deadlines without informing me. I have emails he altered. I have file histories that show he copied work from my team's branch into his own." Mr. Lang shifted in his seat. "Recordings?" he asked. "For personal reference," I said. "To track tasks and requirements. I am happy to provide them." Mrs. Hale nodded carefully. "Let us hear one." I pulled out my phone and played a meeting recording. Edwin's voice filled the room. "Just push the deadline back a day," he said in the clip. "I will manage it. Do not tell Rowan yet. He will catch up." Mr. Lang leaned forward. His expression tightened. I played another clip. This one captured Edwin speaking to a co-worker. "He is too slow. I will take over his tasks and make it look like he missed the timeline. Management needs to see who is really carrying this team." The room grew still. Edwin finally spoke. "This is taken out of context," Mrs. Hale responded sharply. "Both recordings show deliberate actions to mislead another employee and management." I opened my laptop and displayed a code repository history. At least 6 entries showed Edwin pulling parts of my work into his branch without documentation. I showed timestamps, I showed logs, I showed everything. His confident posture crumbled. The tapping in his fingers stopped. His eyes darkened. Mr. Lang looked at him with disappointment. "Edwin," he said, "this is serious. These are not misunderstandings." Edwin swallowed hard. "I did what I had to do," he muttered. Mrs. Hale wrote notes quickly. "This meeting is paused," she said. "We need to escalate this to the legal department. Rowan, thank you for your documentation. We will contact you soon." Edwin stood up fast, knocking his chair slightly. He glared at me with a sharpness he had never shown openly. "You think this proves anything?" he whispered. "You think this is over?" He walked out before anyone could respond. I sat there breathing slowly, letting the weight settle. The truth was out, but I could feel it. Something deeper was coming, something bigger than the lies he told at home or at work. 2 days later, the company found something in Edwin's account, something he never intended anyone to see. I expected silence after the HR meeting. Maybe embarrassment, maybe anger, maybe a cold wall between us until everything settled. But what came next was nothing close to what I imagined. 2 days passed. I focused on my tasks and tried to quiet the tension in my chest. People looked at me differently now. Some nodded with silent support when they passed my desk. Others kept their distance, unsure of what to believe. Offices thrive on whispers. Truth moves slow while rumours sprint. On the morning of the 3rd day, I received an email from Mrs. Hale. She wanted me in her office as soon as possible. No explanation, no attachments, just a short request that carried weight. I walked in and found her standing instead of sitting. She held a printed report in her hand and tapped the corner of the page against her palm. Her eyes looked heavier than usual. "Close the door, Rowan," she said. I did. She lowered the paper and looked at me. "We found something in Edwin's system." My stomach tightened. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat down. She laid the report on the table. The pages looked thick. More pages than a simple breach review should ever need. "During the internal investigation," she continued, "the security team checked the logs of Edwin's workstation. They found a hidden directory." I stayed quiet, bracing myself. It contained confidential code segments, client data structures, and developmental drafts that were not linked to any of his assigned projects. None of it should have been downloaded to his device. None of it should have been altered locally. The words felt unreal for a moment. I blinked slowly, letting them settle. "Was he copying files?" I asked. "Yes, but that is not the worst part." She flipped a page and pointed to a printed screenshot. It showed a messaging platform I recognized. A conversation between Edwin and an external contact. The username of the other person was unfamiliar to me. "They traced this user," she said. "He works for Nexus Innovations. A competitor, one of our biggest rivals. They use similar technology. They chase similar contracts. They were always one step behind or one step ahead. And Edwin had been talking to someone inside that company." Mrs. Hale continued. "We found multiple exchanges. Edwin sent code snippets, design drafts, performance analyses. Some messages even show him discussing how to frame you if anything backfired." My chest grew tight. I felt light for a moment, like my body was trying to float away from the truth to protect me. "He planned the entire thing," I said quietly. She nodded. "Yes. The false deadlines, the missing files, the altered emails, the accusation he made to your family. All of it lined up with the timeline of his communication with Nexus." The room grew silent. I looked at the papers again. The evidence was overwhelming. It was bigger than sabotage. It was corporate theft. It was calculated betrayal. And it was designed to fall on me. Mrs. Hale took a slow breath. "This has moved beyond an HR matter. We have informed legal counsel. We have also informed Mr. Lang. They will handle the next steps. Edwin has been suspended pending a full investigation." I stared at the table, my hands resting on my knees. The weight of years pressed down on me. It was not just about work. It was not just about family. It was everything. Every moment I stayed quiet. Every moment I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Every moment I let peace silence me. She spoke again, softer this time. "I know this is difficult. I also know this confirms everything you hinted at. You were telling the truth." I nodded slowly. My throat felt tight. "There is one more thing," she said. She pushed another set of pages toward me. I picked them up. The print showed a timeline, a detailed breakdown of when Edwin accessed files, when he communicated with Nexus, and when he filed complaints against me. Everything overlapped perfectly. It looked like a puzzle he had spent months assembling, piece by piece, step by step. He was preparing to leave Helix after taking one of our contracts with him, she said. He wanted you to take the fall. I swallowed hard. And now? I asked. She closed the folder. Now we let the consequences unfold. I left her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The truth had surfaced, but the cost of that truth echoed through my chest. My father, my mother, the years of conflict, the years of silence, all of it led to this moment. When I stepped outside into the hallway, Edwin stood at the far end. He had just come from a meeting room. His face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. He saw me, his eyes narrowed. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in him. Real fear. He turned away before I could speak, but I already knew. Everything he built on lies was starting to fall apart. The day everything collapsed began quietly. Too quietly. I arrived at the office early before most people. The hallway lights were half on, and the morning sun had not fully reached the windows. For a moment it felt like any other day. My computer hummed softly as it booted up. I took a slow breath and tried to focus on work. But something in the atmosphere felt different. It felt unsettled. It felt like a room waiting for a truth no one could avoid. I checked my emails. There were several unread messages, but one stood out. It came from the legal department. A short line in the preview read, "Meeting today regarding ongoing investigation." I exhaled slowly. I knew the direction things were heading. I knew the pieces had already fallen into place, but facing it would still feel heavy. At 9:30, Mrs. Hale knocked on my desk gently. "They want you in conference room 1, she said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes carried a mix of sympathy and firmness. When I entered the room, I saw Edwin sitting at the far end of the table. His posture was stiff. His hands were clasped together tightly. His confident aura was gone. Across from him sat Mr. Lang and 2 representatives from the legal department. One of them asked Edwin to confirm his identity and role. Then they began. They presented the findings one by one, the hidden folder, the transferred files, the unauthorized access to sensitive modules, the exchanges with Nexus Innovations, the timeline that matched every accusation he made against me. With each revelation, Edwin shrank a little more in his seat. His face went pale, his jaw tightened, his fingers trembled slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. At one point, he tried to speak. "This is not accurate," he said. "I can explain." But they did not allow excuses. Every explanation he attempted contradicted the data. Every denial fell apart under timestamps, logs, and recorded evidence. It was not a misunderstanding. It was intentional. Finally, Mr. Lang spoke. "Edwin, this is a breach of trust and federal compliance. You put this company at risk. You built a false narrative to protect yourself and harm another employee. We cannot overlook this level of misconduct." Edwin looked down at the table. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. When the decision was delivered, it was clear and final. He was terminated immediately. Access revoked. Security notified. Legal action pending. The silence that followed felt heavy. I watched him as he sat frozen, staring at a point on the table as if hoping it would swallow him whole. This was the moment his entire plan collapsed. Years of manipulation, years of deceit, years of carefully crafted lies, all reduced to a file folder and a printed timeline. He stood slowly, as if his body refused to accept the weight of what had happened. He did not look at me. He did not look at anyone. He simply walked toward the door. For a moment I thought he might say something, an apology, an explanation, a confession, anything. He did not. He left the room without a sound. Later that afternoon, I walked past the reception area and saw him handing over his badge to security. His shoulders were slumped. His face looked hollow. He saw me for a second and something passed through his eyes. Shame, anger, fear, maybe all 3. I held his gaze, but he looked away. That night I received a message from my father. A long message. He said he had spoken to my mother. He said they heard the full story. He said they felt ashamed for ever believing Edwin over me. He asked if I could come home and talk. He said they wanted to make things right. I read the message twice. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I had wanted their belief for so long, but now that the truth was out, it carried a bitter taste. It came too late, after too many wounds. The next day, Helix offered me a transfer to a different branch with a higher role. They wanted me away from the fallout. They wanted to protect me. They wanted to acknowledge what I had endured. I accepted. Not for escape, but for clarity. I needed space to breathe. On my last day before the transfer, Mrs. Kearns pulled me aside. "You handled this with strength," she said. "Do not let what he did shape how you see yourself. You earned your place here." I thanked her quietly. When I left the building for the final time, the sun was setting. The world looked calm, but inside me, something was shifting. I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the truth had finally spoken. Heavier because the years leading to this moment had left scars I had never acknowledged. I walked to the parking lot with a steady pace, not knowing the emotional reckoning that waited for me at home, or the truth I would soon face about myself. The evening after my transfer was approved, I sat alone in my small apartment. The lights were off, and only the glow from the street outside came through the blinds. For the first time in months, the silence did not feel threatening. It felt honest. It felt like a space where I could finally listen to myself. I leaned back in my chair and replayed the last few years in my mind. The decisions I made, the moments I stayed quiet, the times I convinced myself that keeping peace mattered more than speaking truth. Each memory surfaced with a weight I had ignored for too long. People think the hardest part of dealing with someone like Edwin is the lies. But the hardest part is the way those lies train you to question your own reality. They shape how you respond to conflict. They teach you to shrink, even when you know you are right. They make you fear your own voice. I did not realize how much of myself I had lost in those years. Silence became my habit. Avoiding tension became my identity. I carried the hope that things would improve if I stayed patient. I believed that protecting my mother's happiness was worth any discomfort. I let myself become small so everyone else could feel comfortable. But comfort built on silence is never real. It hides cracks that grow with time. As I sat there, I realized something simple and painful. I had allowed Edwin to shape me. Not my choices, not my future, but my sense of worth. That realization hit deeper than any accusation he ever made. I thought about the young version of myself. The boy who sat quietly at family dinners while Edwin soaked up praise. The boy who carried small hurts because he did not want to be seen as a problem. The boy who kept believing that patience was the cure for everything. I wanted to tell that boy something. I wanted to tell him that patience without boundaries becomes self-destruction. That kindness without strength becomes a trap. That silence does not make conflict go away. It only gives the wrong person more room to grow. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street was lit with warm yellow lights. People walked by with shopping bags. Cars passed gently. A couple laughed as they crossed the sidewalk. The world kept moving. It reminded me that pain does not freeze life. It only freezes the part of us we refuse to face. I thought about my parents next. Their apologies, their regret, their disbelief that Edwin could do something so extreme. I knew they meant well. I knew they were hurting. But their words did not erase the years of disbelief. They did not erase the memories of my father choosing Edwin's story before hearing mine. They did not erase the moments I needed support and received silence. Forgiveness is complicated. It does not grow overnight. It needs space. It needs honesty. It needs truth spoken with clarity. I was not ready to accept their apology fully. I was not ready to forget, but I knew I wanted healing more than bitterness. I knew I wanted to move forward. As the room grew darker, I placed my palms on the windowsill and let the quiet settle inside me. The events of the past weeks had opened a door I had avoided for too long, a door to a part of myself I had ignored. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it grows in the quiet moments where we face what we allowed and choose something different. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me, a small but steady sense of clarity, a feeling that the person I had been carrying the version shaped by fear and silence, did not need to follow me into the next chapter of my life. I did not know exactly what waited ahead, but I knew this. The next time truth needed a voice, it would have mine. The morning I left for my new branch, I stood outside the building and looked up at the glass windows that had once felt like a second home. The place had changed me. It had tested me. It had forced me to face parts of myself I had ignored for years. But it had also shown me something important. The truth always rises, but only when you stand with it. For a long time I believed that silence was the best way to keep peace. I thought staying quiet protected the people I loved. I thought patience showed strength, but silence only protected Edwin. It gave him room to grow his lies. It gave him time to shape his own version of the story. Each moment I stayed quiet made his voice louder. I walked to the parking lot and placed my bag in the car. Before I got in, I stood for a moment and let the air fill my lungs. I finally understood the simple truth I had been running from. Kindness without boundaries becomes permission. Forgiveness without clarity becomes surrender. Patience without truth becomes a cage. Every lie Edwin told eventually collapsed because lies are restless. They need constant protection. They demand more lies to survive. And eventually they weigh down the person who carries them. That weight crushed him long before the investigation began. I just never saw it clearly until now. Truth is quiet, but it does not need help to stand. It waits. It endures. It survives every attack, every twist, every attempt to bury it. And when it finally surfaces, it does not shout. It simply appears, steady and undeniable. I thought about my parents again, their regret, their apologies, their new attempts to rebuild what had cracked. I knew forgiveness would come, but only after I rebuilt myself first. I needed to unlearn the version of me that silence had created. I needed to find the voice I had ignored for years. As I drove away from the office, I saw Edwin standing near the edge of the street. He'd come to collect some paperwork from security. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, but in spirit. His posture was different. His face was drawn. He glanced at me as I passed, and for the first time, I did not feel anger. I felt distance. A healthy distance. The kind that grows when you finally walk away from a past that no longer belongs to you. In that moment, I understood something important. Strength is not about winning every battle. Strength is about choosing which battles are worth your breath. Strength is about protecting your peace, even if others misunderstand your choices. I once thought Edwin shaped my life, but standing there, leaving everything behind, I realized the truth. He shaped my past, but I shaped my future, and the person I was becoming no longer fit in the shadow he built. The next chapter of my life would be written with clarity, with courage, with a voice that no longer hid behind fear. I finally understood what it meant to grow from pain rather than stay trapped in it, and I knew this for sure. Everything he built on deceit fell apart. Everything I built on patience and truth survived. Not because I won, but because I finally learned to stand.
Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please subscribe and click the notification button for more stories from Betrayal Stories Central.